Oh, I see it. It went there. I haven't gotten the alert on my phone yet, though.
I think we are live though, right now.
Okay. All right, cool.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode. Do we call these episodes? I guess we could. We could call them episodes.
Okay. I've already got to take the earbuds out because I can't hear you. Hold on. let me change that because that's not going to work out well. I don't know what I did with the keys. Sorry, technical difficulties right off the bat. Right now, how do I make it so that it's not on there?
Kayla, say something.
I can hear you better now. Doesn't sound like it.
Now now it's not breaking up. So
Okay.
I just won't wear that again. I mean,
Well, welcome to another episode of Positively Family Law. Today, we're going to go over retainers and legal fees.
yay, money.
Yes, money.
People's favorite part, paying their lawyer.
All right. So let's start out with what exactly is a retainer?
Well, actually, let's start out with mentioning the fact that for February, in honor of the month of love, we are going to be having a divorce giveaway contest. Everything was supposed to be published on the 1st, but we're having a little bit of difficulties with getting everything up and running online, but it will be out very soon, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more at the end. So yeah, by the end of this month, if you want a free divorce, apply. But we'll talk about that at the end. Now let's talk about money.
Yes. Okay. So what is a retainer?
So a retainer is the best way that I can describe it, or have learned to describe it, is if you think about if you were to rent an apartment and you have first, last, and security. And so your security deposit is your own money, but you give it to your landlord to put in an account to hold in case, either you trash your place and you leave and they need to fix it, or you leave early, and that way they have a security of knowing that they have at least a certain amount, to utilize towards any expenses that are still outstanding. That's exactly what a retainer is. It's a lump sum of money that goes into what we refer to as an IOLTA account. It's a client fund account. So it is not our money, it is your money until we earn it. And then we like for our retainers to stay at a certain amount so that we know that you always have money and you're not finding yourself in this huge amount of debt that you can't get out of. So essentially that's what a retainer is. It's an advancement of fees that hopefully by the end of it, we've equalized it, or you get back, whatever we don't use.
So essentially that is the first step of having the attorney do the work on your case, correct? So that retainer is going to cover, well, let's go into that. Like what exactly is covered under that initial retainer? Like you put it down, what exactly is someone going to get by putting down that initial retainer when they contact a law firm?
The pleasure of working with us. No, well, yeah, but basically, to start that working relationship and to hire the attorney, there's two things that are required. There's one, the legal agreement that needs to be executed both by the person who's looking to hire the firm as well as the firm in and of itself. The terms within that legal agreement are really going to, spell out the scope of the representation. So even though your question is, what does that retainer cover? It really depends on what the legal agreement defines it as. And that can be different in different cases. If somebody is, say, hiring us just to go in for a one-day motion for temporary orders, that retainer or that legal agreement is going to specifically lay out the fact that this is for, that one day, the preparation, etc. Where somebody is hiring us to completely do a divorce, that's going to be a lot more inclusive as to, a lot of different areas and not just one specific day. But your retainer, so for the legal fees, I think most firms bill on either a 0.1 or a 0.2 minimum basis. So if you hear like 0.1s, 0.2s, that's the increment of the hour. There's some firms that I think they start at like a 0.25, which would be a quarter of an hour. A 0.1, so for every 0.1 is approximately 6 minutes of time. So, that includes telephone calls, it includes drafting, it includes court appearances. Right now, in one way, virtual has been helpful financially for some of it, because you're not going and spending 8 hours in court on a motion hearing day. It doesn't mean that it's quick, but there are some hearings that, we're in and out within 45 minutes, which prior to the pandemic would have been approximately 8 hours. So 45 versus 8 hours is much cheaper. But the retainer basically covers all your legal fees. And then if there's any other expenses that come along with that, if we're subpoenaing records, or there's depositions, the retainer can sometimes be utilized to pay those expenses as well.
So now when, you talk about having an attorney on retainer, what exactly would be the difference of, having an attorney on retainer versus, just paying like a flat fee upfront? What are the difference between those two?
So in relation to a flat fee, we don't do many of them. It might be, like I said, something very, very specific. But I find flat fees sometimes either it screws one person, whether it screws the client, because usually if you're like, okay, well, I have this motion, I'm going to bill, I'm going to figure that's going to be 8 hours for a motion hearing plus 3 hours for prep, and you base the flat fee off of that. And then it takes 45 minutes for the hearing, the client got screwed with the flat fee. Or if we underestimate, the attorney gets screwed. But the flat fee is basically, that's a cap at what they're paying. And that's kind of the benefit to it, is that the client knows exactly what that is. It's usually not done on a case, if you need a full-blown divorce, usually not going to be a flat fee, because we have no idea how your divorce is going to go. But like if it's a one-day, say a contempt hearing on a child support issue, that more than likely isn't going to be completely extensive. So we have a better idea of the time frame for it. Whereas having an attorney on retainer means that you have access to that attorney at any point in time. If you're, no, I don't want to use that example. I was going to say, if you're worried about something at 8 o'clock at night, you can call us, but we're trying not to do that because attorneys have lives too. But if you're worried about something and you have questions and you just need to talk with your attorney, you can do that. Whereas on a flat fee basis, if you hired somebody for one day, you don't get to call them a week later to, rehash things or ask questions, without paying for either an additional consult or something. So it just gives you a wider ability to have access and have your attorney continue on your case.
Another option that like we offer, I'm not sure about other firms, but we offer a legal advice retainer. So you can have one of our attorneys on retainer for any legal advice questions that you may have, because you may be at the point where you're thinking about a divorce, but you're not really sure what to do or where to start, or even when to start. It might be a good idea to reach out to a law firm and see if they offer those types of things, because then you can ask questions as you figure things out before you finally dive into the actual filing or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's definitely, especially when it comes to if somebody's going through mediation, but they want an attorney kind of on the side to make sure that they understand what they're agreeing to. We look at it more like we're coaching them through the process rather than actively representing them. Or, we've had cases where somebody has a court hearing coming up. They can't afford to have the attorney come in on that day, but they sit down with the attorney for, let's say, an hour, and they go through and they say, we say, these are the points that the judge needs to hear, because people get really confused. I don't want to say confused. They just don't know, I think, what might be important to them emotionally within a case isn't always what the judge needs to hear in order for them to win their case. And so to be able to coach somebody through that so they know what's important to say, sometimes can be valuable, even if they can't retain an attorney or have them come to court with them on a full-time basis.
Yeah. So, now that we know exactly, what an attorney, asks for when they say, we need a retainer. Now, obviously there's a lot of other things that cover, in the umbrella of family law, but, when you're looking at just divorce, how much would a divorce cost?
Half of everything you own. No. It's so hard to tell because more the more fighting there is in a case, the more disagreement, the more conflict, that all tends to increase price because you don't have two people working together efficiently. When two people can come together and work out those issues that need to be resolved in order to divorce, that's always the cheapest way to do it. Doesn't mean you can do that in every single case, but you should always be looking at where are the areas where we can agree. Now, there might be a case where somebody's hiding money and we have to really dive into discovery, or they're making allegations which we really have to push to try to uncover the truth. Those are all things obviously that you can't always just settle unless you're just ready to give up a lot. But as for the general cost, I'd say most divorces, when there is some conflict but not overly conflicted, cost somewhere between $7,500 and $15,000. Now, I've had cases that have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've had cases that have been in and out within about 1,500. And you never ever know, because I've had clients hire us and they're like, oh, this is going to be so easy. We agree to everything. Come to find out, they really don't. The other person doesn't even know they're getting a divorce. And then we've had other cases come in where, one case that I'm thinking of particularly, we represented the husband, and he was, we're going to fight about everything. She's not going to agree to anything. And we literally, when we went in, he hired us. We went in an emergency motion, I think 3 days after he hired us. We sat down. The other attorney on this case was fantastic because we sat down, we hammered out everything. They got divorced that day. So, that I think is my quickest divorce ever. But you never know. He came in the door saying, this is going to be a fight. This is going to be so much. And then we have other cases that they're like, oh, it'll be no problem. And then you're fighting for years.
So there's a lot of factors that go into what exactly it could cost.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The amount of discovery that needs to be done always increases cost. If somebody, and one of the things you kind of have to be aware of, divorce is extremely emotional, and our clients a lot of times just need some extra support. They need to, know that it can be heard. But there's a fine line between utilizing your attorney as a therapist versus utilizing your attorney as a counsel of law. And sometimes, if somebody's overutilizing their attorney, or if we're getting things, in piecemeal instead of in one chunk, and this happens very often when people are providing us documents, because for divorce, there's mandatory discovery that has to take place. And we need documents from our clients. And, I remember one case where we got like 2 plastic supermarket bags full of unopened mail. And that was, and we were like, you really do not want to pay us to go through this. Like, just please open your mail. Those are all things that are also going to make the cost go up. The more organized you can be, usually the better for you as well.
Okay. So now I know you mentioned, anywhere between, in average, obviously, don't go quoting us saying that.
Yeah, no, don't quote us.
No.
Your case costs like 200,000. You're like, you said 15.
Ballpark, what exactly, let's say someone's watching this and they're like, they're at that point where they want to start. How much should, in your opinion, should someone kind of set aside to start the process of a divorce? Obviously, bearing the fact that there are other factors that go into that and you wouldn't know them, but, just on average, how much should you kind of bank to have set aside when you're thinking about moving forward with divorce?
It's hard because, sometimes when you talk about the overall figure, people might sit back and say, okay, I guess I'm never getting divorced because there's no way I can come up with that amount of money. So I don't know if it's necessarily, having all the funds available immediately. Now, for our firm specifically, if you're hiring us for a contested case, we're going to be looking for a minimum of a $5,000 retainer. To some people, they hear that and, it is what it is. Other firms might charge less, other firms might charge more. That's just where we stand right now. So I know this video will be posted on YouTube, so I don't want to lock myself into that forever either. So as of right now, at the beginning of 2021, we generally look for a $5,000 retainer. But I think, obviously you'd have to have that amount of money up front, but then figure out where you can get additional funds. And I think it's just having a plan, because unless we can finalize your divorce within, or whatever issue you're coming to us within, within that 5,000, you're going to need more funds. And like I said before, we don't want to run into a situation where you owe us a ton of money and we're chasing you looking for money. And we don't want you to walk away with $20,000 worth of debt either. So it's really important to plan how you can continue, paying your legal fees as it goes through. And that might be asking, tons of people ask their family for help. It might be, withdrawing funds from a 401k. It might be taking out a, home equity line of credit on a home. There's a lot of different ways to be able to do it, but it doesn't always mean that you just need to have that money up front, but you have to have an idea and a plan.
Yeah. So, what do you say when, I know what I say, but I'm asking you. What do you say when people, they call our firm, because we're considered a private attorney, we're not a public defender or anything like that. So what do you say to people who can't afford a $5,000 retainer? What are their options at that point?
You have to look at what they're specifically looking for. Divorce and hiring an attorney isn't cookie cutter. Most people going through a divorce want somebody from the beginning to the end. That's not realistic for everybody, and it might be that you just need somebody to put together all the paperwork to make sure that, you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's and you're getting everything submitted right, but then you can work out the rest. But for somebody who can't afford that initial lump sum, I'd look probably first at, is there any, we call it piecemealing it, I guess, or the technical word for it is limited assistance representation, or LAR. So if you hear anybody talking about that, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's rather than representing as a whole, you represent in a piece. And that might be, something that they are interested in. Now there's other people who, $200 or even $100 to them is just beyond, they can't do it. And so with filing for a divorce, if you don't have the funds, you can file what's called an affidavit of indigency, and you can basically apply to the court to have your court fees waived and to have service waived. So that might be something that allows them to get the other person served and to actually start the process without having to pay those fees involved. There are very few legal aid programs that do pro bono work. We do, and I know there's quite a few other firms that have a lot of free information up on their website. If you can't hire somebody to represent you, it becomes almost, you have to educate yourself to be able to represent yourself. And if you can't afford it, you have to put in the time, because I've seen too many people that represent themselves that don't know what they're doing and don't have the time or give the time to learn what they're doing. And they end up, they can get screwed in the end. So we don't like to see that. One of the things that we've talked about, although we haven't been able to put into play yet, are there different ways that we can help people who can't afford, what you think of for typical legal services with, and I won't go into detail because we're still in the discussion phase of them. But we're definitely looking at ways we can help people who can't afford a $5,000 retainer or can't even afford an hour worth of an attorney.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot of information, numbers, a lot of money. So I think that would be a good place to stop, but let's talk about the giveaway.
Yes. So this was actually, somebody had sent me an article on another firm that was doing it. And I thought it was a really, really cool idea where most people, February is feelings of love and happiness, and, you're appreciative of your relationship, or you just really want a good gift and you want them to give you something really cool. But then there's all those people who are just in bad relationships, bad marriages, and they can't get out, and for these people that we're thinking of are the people who, even to pay for an hour's worth of time for an attorney, they can't do it, so we wanted to put together some sort of ability to be able to give a divorce away. Now, of course, there are conditions because we're not going to get into giving away a $200,000 contested divorce that goes to a 10-day trial. So there will be conditions. We are looking for people who both sides want to get divorced. Not one person wants to and the other person says, no, I'm never signing, you're never leaving me, I will die first. Those aren't the people that are going to get the free divorce. If there's not a lot of conflict, if there's things that we're going to pretty much be able to work out, and we can help negotiate through the process, get all the paperwork, make sure they're protected, and be able to move forward. There is going to be a cap because, attorneys have billing requirements and and they can't get tied up. So there will be a cap on the hours allowed so that we don't have somebody like calling us, every hour on the hour wanting to know what's going on. So there are protections for us, but we wanted to be able to do something where we're helping somebody who might not otherwise be able to get out of a situation, make sure that they're protected appropriately and be able to get out. So hopefully that will be published on Monday. If it's not, we might have to push the deadline out just a little bit, but it is coming, so look for it.
And once it's on the website, it will also be posted on Facebook, and we'll give more details on our next live and everything like that. So you'll have all the information as soon as it's readily.
Oh, you froze again.
Did I?
Oh, you're back. It might just be my internet. It's been really bad lately. So yeah, so next week, I will actually be on my honeymoon. And so as long as I have internet service, I'll be doing this from a much different location and not have my little shark behind me. Maybe have a real shark. So yeah, until next week. Again, if there's any specific questions that you want to hear about, feel free to let us know and we can talk about them.
All right, perfect. I think next week, we'll dive into protective orders in Massachusetts and kind of go.
That's always a good subject.
Those a little bit. So, if you have questions about those, please, like I said, email us, comment, send us a message. We're available. Find us anywhere and send us any type of information, and we'll try to address it next week.
Okay, great. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.